So let's talk today about purpose, right? And I appreciate you guys being here today. And this is going to be one of a couple of videos, and we'll splice this into a presentation for you guys to be able to go back and look at again. I'll cover the same topics, but sometimes I see things differently in a different week, or may use a different example, so I want to make sure we get the best examples of everything. So I'll do this. I'm going to do it again next week, and then we'll put it a video for you guys to watch online as well if you want to catch something different every time. So the first question we ask today is, what is our purpose, right? We all are here because we want to know what our purpose is. And in order to address that question, I first have to get something out there as a ground rule for all of us. And that is that you really have to believe in something bigger than yourself to believe that you have a purpose. I want you to think about that for a second. All right, think about this. If you don't have a belief in a higher power or something, right? I'm not talking necessarily about the Judeo-Christian God, but if you don't believe in a power bigger than you, you can't have a purpose. Why? Because there's nothing that would give any meaning to your life. Your purpose would merely be to pursue pleasure for yourself. Okay? So just by the suggestion that we have a higher calling, something that's bigger than we are, really presupposes the existence of good and evil, or at least God, or a God force in the universe, right? So we got to cross that hurdle together. And again, you don't necessarily have to believe in Judeo-Christian God, but you do have to believe in a framework of morality that is more important than your own individual life. Are we there together? Everybody there? We got that? So then, by extension, some of the problems that people deal with in trying to figure out their purpose first is they don't know what their framework is. They don't know what their spiritual root is, okay? And so this can be a very challenging situation for everyone in determining their purpose, because you could say, well, I don't really know what I believe as far as morality is. I don't know what good and bad is. And so the first question you have to address is, what do you believe about the universe? What do you believe about God and your purpose in life? Okay, that's a really metaphysical question, but I can get to your purpose without that. What I want to do right now is challenge you all to really start looking at that spiritual side of yourself. And the problem is with some religions is that really when they try and have some sort of serenity or just being at peace with the universe, there really isn't good and evil in that situation. There is no good or bad. It just is. And so when you have what it is, then your purpose can't exist either, because you're not trying to accomplish something that is better than what you have right now. Understand? So we're getting into some pretty deep metaphysical waters right now, but as you can see, a lot of people are questioning what their purpose is, and I really believe the first problem that we have to get over is, what do we believe? So I'll give you guys some distinctions as we go through this, because it's a pretty straightforward exercise. It's going to take a lot of thought from you guys. You really have to answer these questions to figure it out, and then you're going to figure out how to kind of divine what your purpose is in the center of the questions we're going to ask, okay? So the first hurdle we're going to have to address is, what do we believe spiritually? I'm going to address this from a Judeo-Christian perspective, where there's differences in opinion. I may touch on those, but we have limited time, so I can maybe touch on a couple of things. But I want to make sure that you guys understand that you don't necessarily need religion. It does help, or spirituality, and a belief in a bigger force, but it does help you to get there, okay? Because we're going to be making some value judgments on what we're going to be doing going forward. Okay, is everybody with me so far? Okay, good. All right, so I want to take you guys back 100 years ago. There was a guy named Sigmund Freud who lived, right? You guys know who Sigmund Freud is, the father of modern psychology. So Sigmund Freud says that the purpose of life is to find pleasure, right? Which is what I just told you guys. That human beings were hardwired to find pleasure. We're pleasure-seeking organisms. Well, if you really look at that with a critical lens, right, that falls apart, because human beings are different than animals. Animals are pleasure-seeking organisms. Human beings seek pleasure, but pleasure in something higher. So let's fast forward about 50 years to a guy named Viktor Frankl. Does anybody know who Viktor Frankl was? Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist who was interned at concentration camps at Dachau and Auschwitz. So he was there during the Nazis' extermination of the Jewish people in 1941 to 1944. I don't know what years he was there, but he was liberated whenever they liberated the concentration camps. And Viktor Frankl did a study, right? And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. What is man's meaning in life, right? And I just got this example today, by the way. This is, as I say, this thing evolves, because I heard a piece from Viktor Frankl that I say, this really sums up what I'm talking about, and so I wanted to share it with you guys. So Viktor Frankl would watch people in these concentration camps, and the people who had the longest lives in concentration camps, and ultimately the most people who were liberated from concentration camps, are people who had purpose in their lives. Now, sometimes that purpose was surviving for a child. Sometimes that purpose was surviving for a spouse. Sometimes that purpose was surviving because they had a creative work inside of them they wanted to write about. But while they were doing this, the thing that he noticed, the happiest people were the people who were giving comfort to other people, right? People would smuggle bread into the concentration camps. And the joy that they got giving the last piece of their bread when they're starving too, to another human being, they had happiness and joy and purpose in their lives when they helped that other human being. Somebody bigger than themselves, something bigger than themselves, right? And so when you think about that for a second, if we were really pleasure-seeking organisms, we would just eat the bread, right? Or we'd save it for ourselves or even our family. But these people were giving this bread out to strangers, people who needed it more than them. And they had a great peace and a great satisfaction with giving away. And you see this sometimes, right? You see people who have this really enlightened sense of, let me give this away. In fact, we have some examples in our history of people who gave everything away, right? And I'm not telling you have to give everything away. But the point of this is to say that when you are in service to others, when you're helping other people, you're accomplishing your purpose, your life has meaning. Okay, so with these kind of backdrop, I really want to get into this specifically and talk about how to ask yourself the questions you need to ask to figure out what your purpose is. Now, some of us have been lied to. In fact, all of us have been lied to. The first person to lie to us was who?
Our parents.
Our parents. That's right. Our parents have screwed us all up completely. Me too. Right? So we've all been screwed up by our parents. Our parents have told us things like, you should be a doctor. You should be a lawyer. You should be a teacher. Whatever it was, you should be an engineer. That's what my dad said to me. Right? And so we get these things in our heads that don't necessarily align with our purpose. And so, you have the purposes in your DNA. It's in your DNA at a very young age. And so you begin to get these things pushed on you. And so you start following roads that other people have mapped out for you. And that, I believe in my heart, has resulted in most of the depression, anxiety, frustration, and stress that's caused in our Western civilization right now. Because our parents are the first people who, and they didn't lie on purpose, they want you to be successful. And so whatever is successful in their mind, they try and transmit to you and tell you you need to do this to be successful. Particularly in the immigrant cultures we know about, I know this with Cubans, my wife in particular, you could either be a doctor, lawyer, architect, that's it, right? Those are the occupations that she was given as a choice. And so if you're lied to this way, or you're told this way, if you don't fit in that, if your purpose, you can't see you're getting your purpose there, then you're frustrated and stressed out. And then God forbid you go and do one of those things that's not your purpose, and all of a sudden you're frustrated for the rest of your life. And a lot of us are in there, right? Had I been an engineer, I would have been a bad engineer, and I would not have been successful at all if I had followed my father. My father drilled, you should be an engineer, into my head almost every week, my entire life, until I went away to college, until he couldn't drill it into my head anymore. And when I went to college, my grandmother began to drill in my head, you should be a doctor, right? Those were the two occupational choices I had, and I was not fit for either of those occupations. And so I had, and I tried to do those things and I failed. And so then we take on ourselves when we're failing with what our parents, who we love and should know better, teach us what to do. Come on in. When our parents, hey Erica, come on in, have a seat. You can sit right there.
Okay.
Now I got to back up because I get this tape right. So let me go back and recap for a second. So for purpose, first we all have to agree that there's a power bigger than ourselves, right? Some sort of moral fabric. I'm talking to you, Erica. There's a moral fabric. We all have to believe that there's something bigger than us that assigns a meaning to our life. We can't get it internally. If we get it internally, we're going to be seeking pleasure only. And since we're looking for things that are bigger than just pleasure, there is something bigger than us, at least we believe in implicitly. And so we're following what is our best use and what is our best goal with our lifetime. And what I shared with everyone was a story from Viktor Frankl's book that the people who were the happiest in concentration camps were people who were giving bread and serving other people. And so when we're in service to other people, that is a way to really have meaning and purpose in our lives, okay? So, and then we talked about how our parents have lied to us and screwed us all up, right? Our parents have lied to us and screwed us up by telling us what occupation we should have because they want us to be secure, and so they give the high income earning potential occupation to you. You should be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is. And so they want you to be secure in your life, and so they will tell you these things, and they put that on you, and if you're not doing that, you can feel like a failure. And when your talents and abilities don't align with those occupations, then you begin to become insecure, and you may push yourself to actually become that, but you'd be a bad doctor, a bad lawyer, or in my case, a bad engineer, and so then you get frustrated and you burn out, right? And then you have a meltdown and you say, I want to go all creative, I want to go all hippie, I'm going to go out and be a screenwriter in LA, right? So, focusing in on specifically what are the questions that you can ask to divine your purpose in this framework, okay? And there's really 3 things you need to look at. I could tell 5 or 6 or 10, and I can go with the Christian route and really show you how these all fit together, but I'm going to start with 3 basic concepts for you guys to show you the questions you need to answer for yourselves in order to figure out where to find your purpose. And as I had suggested before, your purpose is not an occupation, okay? Being an attorney is not my life's purpose, right? Let me say that again. Being an attorney is not my life's purpose, okay? We're going to answer your question what my life's purpose is in a second. So I'm going to draw 3 similarly situated circles, or similarly sized circles. I'm a terrible artist, so forgive me. And this is commonly known as a Venn diagram, but it's not weighted to scale. Okay, some of these bubbles may be bigger or smaller, but I'm just going to give these for concepts, okay? So, bubble number 1, what are your talents, and what do you love? I could make it love a separate bubble, but for purposes of our discussion, we need to go here. Now, you need to make a list of all of your talents and the things you love to do. What are you really good at? Now, I'm going to say something here about how our parents have screwed us up again, and our teachers have screwed us up, because our teachers or parents may say, you're not good at that, right? Happens. Something you may be very good at, you may have a temporary barrier to or a temporary problem with. You may not have the attention span to get good at it. You may love it later in your life, and they may mark you as a young person, tell you you're not good at that, and then that becomes a barrier. So what you need to do is you need to ask your friends what your talents are. Ask them to be honest. If you're married, ask your spouse what your talents are. They know. You know in your heart, but there may be things that you're not considering because you have really drilled in your head, I'm not good at that. Particularly if you have a negative parent. My father was also negative. You're not smart enough to go to college, right? Something else, because I wasn't doing well in math to be an engineer, so ergo, you're not smart enough to go to college, right? And so so I'm not smart. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, my dad said, you're not creative, right? I was sitting in a field, and he was doing something in the field. I don't know what he's doing, working on a car or something. I was really bored, and it was incredibly boring for an 11 or 12 or 9 or 10-year-old, whatever it is. Very bored, and I was making my boredom known, and he said, are you bored? And I said, yes, and he goes, you don't have an imagination, right? And that marks you, because you're pissed in the moment, and when you're emotional and you get labeled with something, it really sinks in deep, right? So, we've been marked. And so imagine if I actually believed I don't have an imagination, how could we create this with our minds, right? This whole firm is a creation of my mind, but if I actually really believe that. So you have to ask people, what are my talents? What am I really good at? And what do you love to do? What do you really love to do? This is key. This is the first big step right here, okay? Now, to give you the Christian flair on this for a second, God has given you a certain measure of talents and abilities. He's given you things like giving, intelligence, spirituality, faith, all of these things. And so you can lump these in here and rank them. And I'd take the top 4 or 5 and put them in this bucket. Because as a Christian, the purpose is we want to serve God and we want to give him all the glory using our talents and abilities. Okay, so that's the Christian reflection of this. But you don't need to believe in this to get this lesson, which what are your talents and what do you love? Okay? Now, I forgot my next point. Talents and abilities, what do you love? Have to ask other people about it and make an inventory, okay? And think about it for a week or 2. You've got to get this list as comprehensive as you possibly can. It's very important because you're going to see how these pieces fit together and you need to know what all of your talents are. If you are under the age of, say, 25 or 30 and you say, I can't answer any of these other questions, I would suggest you simply work on developing your talents. Okay, so for the younger people in the audience, if you don't know, and sometimes you don't know what your ultimate life purpose is, you just need to work on developing your talents. I study public speaking. Public speaking is one of my best talents. I take classes in public speaking to this day. Why? Because I need to develop my talent. When I'm in front of 100,000 people, the presentation can be different than 20. And so I need to work on that. So even today, almost 50 years old, I'm still working on developing my talents. When you're young, the purpose of school is to develop your talents, to find out what they are and develop them. So you really have to pour yourself into it. If you can't answer these other questions we're about to get to, you got to pour yourself into this, okay? Now, the next question is, what do you hate? Great, how could something I hate be key to my purpose? Well, think about it for a second. What do you get emotionalized about? What irritates you? What do you dislike? What do you want to overcome in your life? You see, one thing that Viktor Frankl told us also in his book is life is defined by struggle, right? I had another guy tell me today that without joy, without suffering, you can have no joy. The degree of joy you get in your life is equivalent to the degree of suffering. That's a scary equation, right? If I want to be really joyful, I got to have a lot of suffering. And I can tell you this is true because I've had a lot of suffering, and I do have a high level of joy. But then I can also go back down to suffering too. So we all want to stay up here in the joy, but you don't want to feel the suffering. Losing defines the win, right? When you lose something, it defines what winning means. And we hear these platitudes, but that's the truth about life. But we have to identify what we hate. And I'm going to give you some examples of that in a minute when we finish the circle out so you can kind of put some meat on these bones. What is it we hate? What really annoys you? Maybe somebody lying to you, right? Could be somebody lying to you. Maybe somebody dropping their commitments, not meeting their commitments. Maybe it's illness. Maybe you have somebody very close to you who died when you were younger and you hate the fact that people get sick and suffer, right? Maybe it's maybe it's ignorance, right? And there are purposes that go with each of these things that you hate. But what does it really get you up in the morning? If you haven't figured that out yet, wait for it. You'll figure it out eventually. It's just going to come to you and you'll be like, oh, I get so mad when, right? And that is a key to finding your purpose. And then the last circle I have here is who do you serve? Your purpose lives in the center of how you use your talents against what you hate for the people you serve. It lives right here in this little circle, right there. That's your life's purpose. So your occupation ideally will align these three things to allow you to serve a group of people using your talents against the thing that you hate. I'll say that again. Your purpose will allow you to use your talents and abilities to serve the people who you love against the thing that you hate, to overcome the thing you hate for those people. Does it all make sense now? Come together? So let me put some meat on the bones for you guys, because this stuff is like, it can be very abstract. It's going to take you weeks to figure this stuff out. Or maybe you'll do it today, but I can tell you it took me weeks, if not months, to figure this out. So let me talk about my experience for you guys so you can kind of get a sense for this. What are my talents? Public speaking, right? Create structures. Leadership. Teaching. Academics. That's a few just off the top of my head, right? When you look at this right here, several of these are centered around being a lawyer, right? But that's not what makes it supercharged and amazing, because with this, I could be a church leader too, right? I could be the head of any organization, right, that needs that. But then you have to throw the other things in. What do I hate? I hate oppression. I hate bullies. I hate when people feel helpless. So you're starting to see how this works, right? So when I was a little kid, right, let me tell you, and this is part of a speech I'm going to give later, but I'll tell you a little story about when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was on a playground, and I was an awkward kid. I was very chubby. I had man boobs and big ears, and my hair, I would always swoop it down and grease it down with water, because we didn't use Mooser's gel back then. So I'm a little kid. My sister was even more awkward than I was. She was overweight and had a speech impediment. She couldn't say the letter R. And so we were both always picked on, like constantly. When I tell you it was incessant, it was constant. She was a year younger than I was. We're on a playground. And there's this kid, Harry Rossback, who's on a swing, and he's swinging back and forth. And he jumps over the next swing, and my sister's on the last swing. And so then he starts ramming the swing into my sister. And I was bigger than Harry. It's really weird, right? I'm bigger than Harry, but at the moment I got frozen in fear, right? I was paralyzed in fear because I didn't know what to do. And I had been bullied so much that it miswired circuits in my brain. Like I don't know what to do, so I freak out, and I'm standing there, I'm like paralyzed. My sister gets off the swing, she and Harry start having a fight. Harry and her get tired, we walk home, then my mother freaks out, and made the situation worse, because then I get freaked out from my mom, I'm paralyzed there, I didn't know what to do, I'm totally terrified. Mark me. But I will tell you that it made me hate bullies, and it made me say I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm never going to let a bully somebody who I care about, right? Mark me. So that's something I hate, but it was key to finding my purpose. So who do I serve? This is very unique to me. I can't say that all of you have this, but this is a question you have to answer. Who do you want to serve? It could be society, it could be Doral, it could be Miami Lakes, it could be, my community, my church, it could be any number of things. But I can tell you something funny. After I married Hani, I started thinking about who is it who I always liked. And when I was in this bully environment, funny enough, growing up in a pretty, let's say, lower middle class environment where intelligence wasn't particularly valued and nobody cared about public speaking, structures, leadership, teaching, and those things, right? That's just a target, right, for you if you've got those talents, right? So what I did notice that I was always very curious about foreign exchange students. We always had a foreign exchange student or two, and we always had kids from other countries who were in my school, one or two of them, and I always was attracted to them. Maybe it was because I thought that they would be someplace else and I wouldn't have to deal with the nonsense that I had to deal with here, or maybe I was just curious about different cultures. I always loved other cultures. I remember seeing magazines like National Geographic, reading stuff about other people's cultures. And so I was always attracted to that group of people. And so as I grew up, it's funny, the pattern followed me. I was, when I sold windows door to door, I was always in the crew that people called the United Nations. There was a Polish guy, a Venezuelan guy, an Ethiopian guy, and myself. It sounds like a joke, right? They walk into a bar. And so, but the truth is that we were all together. They called us United Nations. And then funny enough, when I went and got my job in Miami, the group I hung out with there, they called the United Nations too, because it was always very diverse. And so I love people who are immigrants. Right? That's who I really was attracted to. I always wanted to find out about people's culture. I had a genuine love for people who were from other places. I really did. Right? So, as a lawyer, I use my public speaking to help immigrants from being bullied by insurance companies. Every day. And as I began to unfold some other talents of mine, like building structures, I say, hey, you know what? As one person, I can help 100 people a year. But as 100 people, we can help 5,000 people a year. And so that's what we did. So I took my next talent, structures, to build something that can serve immigrants against bullying and oppression and helplessness. And if you really look at this, if you look at our marketing materials just tell these stories, right? Because Hani's got the same story. She has different talents, she has different things she hates, and she has a very similar heart for service to the people who we serve. But the truth is that we use all of these talents because we know the pain of being paralyzed, and we know the pain of not having the ability to pay your bills because you've been hurt in a car accident. So for me, these things line up really well. But you see how that doesn't work with a doctor? I can do this for a doctor, right? A surgeon would be somebody who's really good with their hands, academically gifted, right? Somebody who likes to fix things, right? And likes to fix people when they're broken, and they hate illness, right? Or they have a friend who got really hurt and they want to help those people. Now you say, Greg, that's like 1% of doctors. And I agree with you. That's why 99% of doctors are miserable. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. And more people who maybe should be doctors didn't be doctors because they couldn't be doctors or think they could be doctors because they didn't know what their purpose was. They didn't get in line with it. And so we have a lot of people who are suffering unnecessarily because they never did this exercise to think, what am I good at? Instead, they got marked by their parents. Now, here's a real key distinction for you guys. If you go and do what your parents tell you to do, who are you serving?
Them.
Your parents. This bubble is almost never filled with your parents. Almost never. And like 99.99% of the time, it's not your parents in here. And yet, how many of us follow what our parents tell us to do? And even the Bible says, honor your father and your mother. But that does not mean following the career choice that they picked for you based on what their preferences were and what they thought their talents and abilities are. Right? If you go and do what your friends are doing, you're serving your friends. I'll give you a trick question. Who do you serve when you want to get up and be a performer on the stage? There's two answers there. I'll give you the good answer. The good answer is the audience. Okay? If you're not serving the audience, who are you serving? What happens when you serve yourself by pursuing fame and fortune? What happens?
You're not serving our purpose.
You're not serving a purpose, but you melt down. When you do something to serve yourself only, there's no value in it. You don't have a deeper connection with people. You don't have a meaning in your life. And so you can get a tremendous amount of fame and fortune even, and then you will melt down. It happens all the time. You see celebrities, drug overdoses, all of that is because they're serving themselves here. Maybe they're serving their parents at first, and then they go in and they start serving themselves. They don't care more about the audience than they care about themselves. You see this happen with preachers too. A lot of preachers go into ministry because their father told them they should go into ministry, because the father loves ministry and they think they want what's best for the kid. So the kid goes into ministry. I'm talking to you. Kid, not you're going to be a minister, but you've seen this. The kid goes into ministry. He doesn't have the calling. And then he gets up on the platform because it's cool to talk in front of a group of people, and he thinks that's great, and everybody's saying, oh, you're so amazing, you can speak so well. But if he's serving himself, he's going to fail. Because serving yourself can only get you so far, right? And you can serve your family. Like if you put your family in here, that's okay, but is that really bigger than you, is just serving your family? I need to earn money so that I can feed my family. Yeah, but that's basic, right? If you really want to get your purpose, the big purpose in your life, you got to look at serving somebody bigger than your family. And I'm not saying it's wrong, because your family shouldn't starve. If your family's got to starve, you're doing something wrong, right? But the truth is that the purpose is bigger than your family. Your purpose is bigger than your friends. It is your community. It is your city. It is your state. It is your country or the world. And so you have to answer these questions for yourself. I can't give you the magic wand today, and there are other layers to this, but this is the first step in figuring it out. And if you're doing an occupation that's in the middle of here, that's great. If you're not, you really should look for something else. But you got to answer these questions honestly before you can even figure out what that is. You guys are a little fortunate. When we test and evaluate all of you, we really try and find the people who are right here. People who can work within our systems, people who have the personalities and the heart of service. When we talk about these are things that are driving our decisions when we bring you into the organization, that we already think that you're aligned with this. And I wish, and Giselle's on the TV. I know I had a conversation with her before because she said she wanted to be a nurse. And I'm very careful when I tell people not to do something. With Giselle, I said, Giselle, you'd be a terrible nurse. She probably has the heart to serve those people, but she has all of her talents are up in the law field, right? Maybe she has a little knowledge about medicine, enough to be good in the law field, but the truth is that she's incredibly talented in areas that have no use being a nurse at all. Maybe a CEO of a hospital someday, right? But definitely not a nurse. I know that. I can see it. In fact, I see it with most of you guys, right? I can see where your talents are. And we know because we test you. We test you both psychologically and we test you in the day-to-day, the grind of things. And so if you're struggling with figuring out your purpose, you haven't answered these questions. You need to do an honest inventory of yourself. This is probably the hardest one. Who are you going to serve? Because is it a geographic boundary? Is it a group of people? What is it? Right? When Starbucks started, they wanted to serve the community they were in. And then that vision grew bigger and bigger and bigger. But does anybody know what Starbucks' ability is? What they do? It's not serve coffee. They provide the Italian cafe experience. That's what they do. And that's why you pay $5 for Starbucks. Because you're getting the Italian espresso, cafe, outdoor cafe experience at a Starbucks. And they found there was a tremendous demand for that because people are transported mentally. And so they're actually an entertainment business almost because you get the feel of every Starbucks is the same. Right? McDonald's serves fast food. They feed people cheap and quickly. If you have any doubt about this, go watch The Founder, the movie with Michael Keaton. Great movie. Shows you the truly sinister history behind McDonald's. It's really amazing because he had Ray Kroc had structures. The McDonald's brothers didn't have that, and so he was able to take his talents into this organization to feed people. He served himself a lot, but he did a really good job of scaling the business. If you want to be completely fulfilled, you've got to layer these other things in here. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward and pretty simple, I think. What do you think? I'm looking at you, Denzel. Tell me. It's not rhetorical. What do you think?
It has to align. If not, then you'll be struggling, searching for something you're not never going to be fully satisfied with.
But does this surprise anybody? Is this like, oh my God, that's totally like, it's not surprising, right? It's organizing in 3 simple steps, a method for you to figure this out, right? But you don't write doctor in here. you would be serving sick people against illness, using your whatever your personal talents are to help ill people against illness, right? And that would be the ideal doctor. And there's a lot of reasons to be a preacher or a lawyer or a salesman or anything else. Relationship counselor, psychologist. I mean, you can think of all these occupations, but the problem is that we get so far into our lives just trying to survive and get a paycheck, right? How many, it was your third, fourth job here? How many is that, right? And if you don't happen to fall into the right job, you're drifting because you don't have this to guide you, right? I've had 20 jobs. I know, and I look back over it, and each of those jobs, I was working in here in the talent area, but I didn't have any of this stuff in it. And that's why I did well because I was very talented in those areas. And you can do well, but when you're just taking the paycheck home, it ultimately gets meaningless. And you begin to get what they call role satisfaction problems. You're like, am I really doing the best thing I can be doing right now? And then you look for the next thing. And you're always going to be going for your talents unless you figure this out. Okay? Not rocket science. Questions? You got to have a question, Allison. Come on. Go ahead, Rachel.
So under who do you serve, right?
Mhm.
That was kind of the easiest one for me.
Oh, yeah?
Cause I don't hate a lot of things, so I guess I have to really look into myself.
Mhm.
Like I don't know. I won't say I'm not a hateful person. You can hate things without being a hateful
Mhm.
person. To dislike something, it takes a lot from me. But I just put people and like just be a thing.
It could be you want to serve
I just
people.
care about people, like anybody. It could be a random old lady that walks up to me in the middle of the day. She doesn't have to be like a certain lady. She just a
Great
person.
question. Okay, so let me make a very hopefully useful distinction for you. I hope it's useful. And so here's one of the problems. This happened to me early on in my career. If you can't narrow this down, you begin to serve everyone, you begin to dissipate your energy. So it's possible that you are supposed to serve everyone, but if you're supposed to serve everyone, then that's McDonald's, right? And then you have to be hyper focused on these two things: hating inefficiency, right, and building structures to produce a hamburger that's cost a nickel to make, and you can sell it for $1, right? If you're serving everybody, the more you can focus it, the more you can concentrate your energies. That's why I've been so resistant to going into the English market, because we're serving immigrants now, and by advertising in Spanish, we focus on the immigrant market, right, or the non-English speaker market. And they tend to be more oppressed because insurance companies take more advantage of them. So you can serve people. I have a heart of service. I want to hold the door open for the little old lady. I want to, if somebody needs food, money for food, I want to give them money for food. But that's not my core purpose, right? And you can dissipate a lot of your energy trying to take care of everyone. There was a very wise guy. Unfortunately, he passed away. He said to me, "Be careful who you pull on your boat. You can't save everybody. Sometimes you got to throw somebody a life preserver." Yeah.
So, how do you like, cause looking back at my life, you know how you say you look back at your life,
Mhm.
and like, you've always serviced immigrants. I've always been the type of person, like, if I see somebody sitting alone at lunch, I'll say hi. Like, why are you
Mhm.
sitting alone? We can sit together. So, like, I don't know how to, maybe the people who don't have anybody, like, I don't know how to make it a by itself thing, cause I don't know, like, I kinda don't care where you're from, what you look like.
You serve lonely people. Now,
That's my thing, like-
I'm careful saying that to you. I don't want to release a seed into you without being 100% sure, but that's an example. I'm just doing it for illustrative purposes. I think that the reason why you serve lonely people is there's something about lonely people that you don't like, you want to fix. Not the people, I mean the situation they're in. And so you have a compassion for whatever they're going through. For some reason, that person is alone. And so you want to help that situation. You want to help that person in that thing. Ask those questions. Why do I want to help lonely people? It was easy for me. I had 30 years of looking back on all the people I hung out with from other countries. That's easy. Now all of a sudden I'm like, duh, right? It's very easy. But for you, you have to say there's something about those people. Maybe that they're vulnerable. Maybe it's they're victims. Maybe it's that they're awkward. Maybe it's that they can't speak the language. Maybe whatever it is, those things that you want to help them with. Not just a feeling of loneliness, but there's something else that's insulating them from people. The lack of connection. You want to help people who are desperate, whatever it is. You see where I'm going with this? You have to ask the question, what is it about that person or that type of person who I want to help? Why is it bothering me? And you're going to find something you hate in there too. You don't want them to feel like they're alone.
You just like set off 10 light bulbs in
Yeah,
my head.
right.
Yeah.
When you really start asking the questions, by the way, I should have said this first. The quality of your life is driven by the quality of the questions you can ask yourself. I mean it sincerely. Every single thing that's great that we can accomplish always starts with a question, not an answer. The answer, the idea, is an answer to a question. And sometimes the question, we don't even know we asked it. But if you can condition yourself to ask more intelligent questions, your life will take off like a rocket. But you have to be willing to confront those questions. Most people, we have weak question muscles, right? We don't ask really strong questions because we don't know what the answer is. I'm proud of all of you because we're sitting here trying to ask, what is my purpose? That is the scariest question you can ask yourself. And particularly for you, Allison, you're very young. Congratulations to you. I hope I can save you 22 years difference between us. 22? 32 years. Difference, is it 30? 40? Yeah, 32-year difference between us. I hope we can save you 32 years. If you figure this out now, you're going to have an amazing life that will go much faster in success for serving your purpose. And it isn't always about money, by the way, but you guys get that. They're like, the more people you serve and the bigger service you provide, the more compensation you will receive. That's just a law of the universe, that if you serve people the more people you can serve and the bigger problem you tackle, you'll make more money. The money's a result, it's not the drive. Don't ever, ever, ever think money is the purpose. It really is not. And if you try and chase it, what's going to happen? Burn out, go broke. Right? Do you have a question, Leon?
I don't really. I feel like I know what my passion is, I guess, in terms of who I serve.
Okay. Do you mind sharing?
No, I believe children.
Okay.
I believe that's I've always, I guess, had a love for them, and I just believe that that's, I guess, my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess people what I hate is, like children not having somebody to believe in them, and that's something that I guess.
So you're saying you hate the child not having somebody believe in them. Is it you hate that a child doesn't have somebody believing in them, or is it you hate the feeling that a child gets?
Yeah.
You understand? You see the difference?
Yeah.
And it's a very tricky thing that you're bringing up there. Why? Because you can only influence yourself. You can only control yourself. It's hard to make a child believe they have somebody who believes in them if they don't believe they have somebody who believes in them, right? That's a deeper issue. You may want to start unlocking that a little bit, because I can actually see that going a little deeper. Like you maybe hate dysfunctional families that don't encourage children to believe in themselves. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you the answer to that right now, because there's like 20 or 30 questions you've got to ask to unwind that. And so you got to do the work yourself. And I'll help you with it, but I can't tell you the answers. But you get it. I can tell you get it. You get it. Erica, how about you?
One of my questions was, what are some typical maybe symptoms or defining moments that one might experience to know that they are not in their purpose whatsoever?
I don't know the answer to the question for you.
Well, yeah, not
Right?
just like in general.
No, but that's a great
but,
question.
yeah.
I thought you were going to go somewhere totally different with that.
Oh,
And so,
sorry.
no, I was like, that's a great question. And then you went this other direction. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I got to think of that one for a second.
Yeah.
So,
Even personal examples, or even in colleagues or maybe team members you've worked with where there's been a defining moment or conversation where it's nothing malicious, but it's just like, hey, I'm not in that center,
Well,
I'm not my purpose.
here's what this does. This allows you to take the emotion out of the equation for a second, because what you're talking about can be a confrontation with a coworker, and it may just be a miscommunication, or maybe an issue that you have, a trigger that they pushed
Right.
for you, that all of a sudden you're upset at them, and it doesn't mean that you're not in your purpose.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't mean that. You've got to do this work to get the guide, to get the roadmap.
Right.
Okay, so do this work. And then, is there something that can make you realize that I'm not a big epiphany person. The only epiphany I ever had was when I was in church and I received Jesus, and that was an epiphany because I heard a voice in my head, and I was like, oh, I better listen to this voice. Like, that was a big epiphany for me. I have not had any more. I've had a few smaller epiphanies like that, but they've all been spiritual. So I'm not a big, all of a sudden, hey, I'm not in the right line of work here. In fact, they had to beat me. Like I really didn't think I should be a lawyer. People kept saying, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer. And I was like, no, I was going to be an engineer before I was a lawyer. And then I got to law school and the heavens opened. I was like, oh, I'm in the right place, you know? And I just didn't know that because, we have a lot of self-exploration we have to do.
Sure.
So be careful that you don't confuse because listen, okay, now I'll tell you this. Human beings can get you off your purpose totally unintentionally, but they can really mess you up. And we talked about parents, we talked about teachers. Let's talk about coworkers, bosses, and that sort of thing, right? If you have somebody, I mean, you guys know me. The reason why I have a temper, by the way, is because of these bullies. Because in that moment of panic and fear, like I've been doing this self-diagnosis work for the last few weeks, and I realized that my temper problem is rooted to this feeling of paralysis I had when I saw the bully going after my sister, or the paralysis I had when the bullies were picking on me. I realized that, and so I developed this temper to say when somebody's coming at me, I'm like, oh no, you don't, right? I had a guy at Wells Fargo this morning. I told this to the managers. I'm there. I come in. My lock broke on my front door this morning. The lock. I couldn't lock the door, and I'm frustrated, right? I'm already running late. Right, we're supposed to be doing some things, and so I had to go over to Home Depot, and I had to go to Wells Fargo to close my account, right? And so I'm late for the Wells Fargo appointment because I got this thing, and you don't make an appointment at Wells Fargo, you're never getting in to see them because they love to just make you wait in the lobby. And so I had this appointment. I'm checking out at Home Depot. I got to get the lock fixed so I can lock my house. I got guys coming to the house today, so I'm there running around. I get a call from Wells Fargo. I realize I'm late. I jump in the car. I drive over to Wells Fargo. I walk into Wells Fargo. There's this glass there, and I said, yeah, I have an appointment to close an account. And the guy looks down. And he goes, you're pretty late. And I was like 10 minutes late. And I'm like, if I could have reached through the plexiglass and pulled this guy's face through the plexiglass, I would have done it. I was like, I know I'm late, right? I'm not late because I chose to be late. I'm late because I have other things going on in my life. Can you please just get me my appointment? And so I get with the manager and got the account closed. And I said to the manager, I said, listen, totally inappropriate what this guy did. I'm not late on purpose. I respect your time. You respect my time. I've had to wait hours in Wells Fargo lobbies, right? Give me a little grace, right? That was a blow up. Like I was gonna yell at the guy, and I was like, okay, now I'm the jerk on TV who yells at people in the bank, and I look like I'm too good, right? So I gotta like, this other voice inside my head is like, shut up, Greg, because they probably know you, and then you're gonna be like looking like the big, jerk in front of everybody at Wells Fargo. And I've been that guy, and I don't want to be that guy. But the temper was like, there was a confrontation, a microaggression there, and I'm like, it's a bully, like he's being a bully, and I'm like, oh, you want to go? I mean, stupid, right? I mean, I'm going to break my hands, mess up my face, all that stuff. The kid was young, he was big, I don't know. But this is the point, is we get drawn into these moments of, intense emotion, and it's like, and then it gets to our root because our parents have told us that we're not valuable maybe, and so we're feeling devalued by these people, and that puts us back in that feeling of being a child again, and we don't like it. So we're like, screw this isn't my purpose. If this is my purpose, this would all be going well, right? And it isn't the case. God is not concerned with your comfort. God is concerned with your development, right? So if you're being comfortable, probably not in your purpose. This is very difficult, but very rewarding. The purpose is not to find the easiest path. If you want to do that, seek pleasure under using your talents. If you just want pleasure, use your talents, make as much money as you can with your talents. Your life has no meaning except for pleasure. I know we don't believe that. So then, with the greater purpose in life, we have struggle. And it's going to be struggle against the thing you hate. And sometimes it may be struggles against other things too, by the way. I mean, it's not just the things you hate. The struggle I have right now, the bully is the Internal Revenue Service, right? Sometimes it's that bully, and that activates me big time, right? But I'm not serving these people, I'm serving myself. So I have to turn that over to Mike and let Mike deal with that problem because I'm not going to be doing good here. This isn't my purpose. Mike's service right now is to serve the firm, right? He serves our clients, but he serves us as well. And so that is his purpose. Hopefully he wants to serve us. I don't know, but yeah, he's doing a good job. So I'm assuming he's fairly in his purpose because he wants to be a lawyer and he likes to do those things, right? So you see that. So I have to get out of this equation because it's not going to be good for me there. So to answer your question, so I don't think there's epiphanies on the this is my life purpose, and I don't think there's epiphanies on the this is not my life's purpose. But I think if you do the work, you're going to have, it's just going to be like a compass. You're going to start, oh, there's another great example. Man, now you did ask a good question. This is good. So how does a guided missile, right? You have this little guided missile here, takes off. Got a little jet fuel coming out there, right? Guided missile. How does a guided missile hit its target? Constant course correction. You've done this before. So right, so it starts off here and it's flying this way and it's over here and then it corrects and it's over here and it corrects and it's over here and it corrects and over here and corrects. Let's see the target's here, right? And it's like over here and it corrects and it's over here and corrects and then corrects this way and corrects this way and then it goes like that.
It's not a straight path.
Not a straight path at all. Right? And this is all called wisdom here, you know. But the truth is that when you have your purpose, when you know your purpose here, and by the way, your purpose is never accomplished. That's another thing. My purpose isn't to make $1 million. If you can get it, it's not a purpose, because that's a step. Your purpose is to be able to serve people continuously until you die. Your purpose will never be totally accomplished. I will never see a day when all immigrants are free of oppression, right? I'm just not going to see it. It's going to happen. And so we have to work our hardest against it, right? Think about Martin Luther King for a second, right? His purpose, he had a dream. His dream has not been accomplished yet, right? He had a dream, and it was a powerful, that was his purpose, was to fulfill that dream, however, through peaceful protest to accomplish that transition in society. He did a lot. He did not accomplish that goal or that purpose. It was unfulfilled and remains unfulfilled today, and we are struggling to accomplish that purpose. So I didn't answer your question, but I think I answered your question.
Yeah. I think
Right? There's no like dawning moment of aha.
Right.
And maybe somebody will have one of those. Somebody's going, I had an aha moment, and I'll be like, okay, but I bet it fits into one of these, the aha moments along here. But be careful that it's not an emotional aha moment, because in Christian faith, we believe that the devil will trick you. Right? The devil's constantly trying to trick me. I'm trying to say, is that person a good person or a bad person? Should I do business with those people or not? And I see something I don't quite like, and then I have to test it, and I have to test it again. I have a preacher come up to me and say, I have a prophecy for you, and they drop something on me, and I'm like, wait, that's totally different than what I'm thinking. I got to test it, right? Because I want to submit to God's will, and but I got to test it, because it's not always what I think it is, or maybe it's something for 5 years from now, not today. So we've got to be very careful with how we let our emotions, our fears, our insecurities, and how we've been marked in our lives drive our pursuit of our purpose. Gabriel, I know you got a question.
No, I don't.
No questions?
No. I mean, I am personally struggling with the talents.
With the what?
With the talents.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no.
You got a lot of talents.
Yeah.
You really are. All right, you need to sit down. Well, first of all, ask your wife, bring me the list, and I'll tell you, yeah, I'll add a few more onto that. You're extremely talented. Extremely talented. You know, if you're struggling, you know, the problem is, okay, so here's another thing, and again, this is all from my experience as a kid. Parents will mark us and will be insecure about bragging about ourselves. Don't brag. It's rude. Don't brag. You're this. Shut up, get in the corner. Kids shouldn't be told, you know, kids shouldn't talk. Right? So we get all marked with that kind of stuff. We're carrying all these baggage. Like you know how we live life? We have a big bag of baggage, and we're backing into every room with our baggage first. We're like, where am I going? I don't know where I'm going, but I got all this baggage. And so, you know, your parents or somebody dissuaded you from feeling confident about your talents. Right? Everyone in this room is incredibly talented. And I'm not a liar. I am telling you 100% the truth. Every single person I'm looking at right now is extremely talented. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. Now, whether you have access to that talent is another question. Okay, mute. Crazy. All right, I think that was Janet. Janet, mute. Some much needed levity. So, my advice to you is talk to your wife. She will tell you what your talents are. I'm sure she's telling you things and you're saying, that's not true. Shut up. Yes, it is true. All right? My wife knows my talents better than I do. She would tell me, you're this and you're this and you're this. And I was like, I don't really feel like that. And now I'm like, I'm that. I am that. She's like, you're really good on TV. I'm not good on TV. I'm like, where's the camera? Where's the camera? Give me the camera, right? Because we have some insecurity about ourselves and we don't like to brag because we've been told that that's not becoming. But you've got to know what your talents are and you got to know what you love. By the way, the other thing is, you know, there's two things here. There's what you're talented at and what you love. I love teaching people. I love sharing whatever terrible experience I've had so you don't have to go through it. I love that. I hope you guys get something from this. I mean it sincerely. If one of you guys can avoid one major catastrophe in your lives, today would be totally worth it, right? I love that. I really, really love that. And I want you guys to avoid the mistakes I made. So that's why I'm always so forward about my mistakes, right? Most people get scared about that stuff. I want to share it because I don't want you to do the same thing I did. So, all right. I'm staring at you because I know you have a question. No?
No question.
Well, if you don't have a question, I'll have to go to Lynette. So,
I have a question.
what do you got, Lynette? We've talked about this before.
Yes.
What do you think? Have you done this work yet?
No.
Aha. What's the barrier?
I don't know. I just haven't put in the time, quite honestly.
I mean, that's the result. You haven't put in the
Yeah.
time. But why?
I don't know.
I think a lot of times we struggle with it. It's just the fear of finding out that we're not in the purpose currently at the time. I know I struggle with it. One of my biggest fears is failing, so it's like, I don't wanna
Yeah.
be in a place or stand somewhere I don't feel I'm called, or that's my purpose.
So we want to be the ostrich and put our hand in the sand and not confront this. You're absolutely right, and I totally, so listen to that, because it's true. The reason is because you haven't put in the time. That's the result. The reason is sometimes we're afraid to figure out our purpose. Like, why I'm so excited to see you guys here is because you've at least come to a place where you can begin to ask the question. And that is 100% better than everyone who's not here. Because I can tell you that nobody there knows what their purpose is. We all don't know what I only know because I did the work. But I did the work because I tried all this and it wasn't working because I was all the way out here. I was all over the place. I'm going back this way, I'm coming around this way. I'm running out of marker because I can't figure out the path. I'm going over here. I'm like, here, I got to change colors because I'm like, oh my gosh, I changed careers. Was this the right choice? I'm on the defense side, I'm on the plaintiff side. I don't know what I'm doing. I go on my own. I'm like this, and I'm like, I don't want you guys to go through that.
Yeah.
So I give you guys everything I got because I want to save you from my ridiculous path. And I realized if I didn't do the work, I'd still be doing this. A lot of us are doing this, and we're like, why do I not feel fulfilled in my life? Well, because you haven't done the work. But what you said is true, and I believe this 100%, 110%, that one, we're afraid to figure out we're not in our purpose. Or more importantly, we're afraid to figure out we are in our purpose. Is this everything? You know the question that scared me the most as a child? What is infinity? Imagine eternity, right? And my brain, because I was a smart kid, my brain was like totally blown up. I would have heart reactions. And I remember telling a therapist this one time years later, and he's like, why would you get scared about that? I'm like, I don't know, I'm a kid, I'm scared of infinity. You know what I mean? The concept of infinity is scary. And the concept that this is what your life is, that's scary. Because once you say this is my life's purpose, then you're held to that standard. And that's a terrifying place to be, right? It's very scary. Or worse, if you say you're there and you get it wrong. But I promise you, if you do the work, you're not going to get it wrong. Because maybe you land here, or here, or here, but you're not going to land over here. So you're going to be pretty close to your purpose, and you will find ways. God is going to send you messages to tweak your purpose into this area right here. But you got to do the work, and you got to overcome the fear. The biggest barrier for all of you to figure this out is the fear of actually finding your life purpose, because then you think that's the end. And I can tell you that's just the beginning. Because when you find your purpose, you say, wow, how can I serve these people even more? Every day I get up and I think, how can we serve these people better? How can I be a better version and stop this more and help these people more? And how can I build and grow? And that's what God has for us, growth. I mean, if you really look at this, God is a God of creation. And this is my belief system, but I do believe that every organism in the planet grows, right? We all grow, and then we die. But we grow. While we're growing and alive, we are growing in a constant state of growth. And it's growth towards an objective. Every organism is hardwired to grow towards a point. So when I tell you this is a law of biology too, it is. You're hardwired to grow to a specific point. The problem as human beings is we get our brains in the way, and we start getting worried about picking the point we're growing towards, because once we do that, we say, is that it? And I can tell you that when you find that point, it's the exact opposite. It frees you. It does not restrict you. That doesn't mean you can't go and watch the TV show you like. You can't go and take your kids to the park, because all that is part of life too. But figuring out what you want your life to mean and how you want to make a dent in the world, that is, and figuring new ways to do that, that is the purpose of life. And that's what gets you up in the morning and leads you to feel fulfilled.